Okay, what we're going to talk about in this lecture is how townships are subdivided into sections. Now, first of all, we need to know how the sections are numbered. And they're numbered between 1 and 36. There's 36 sections in a township. Now, just to review, a township is 6 miles square, and a section is 1 mile by 1 mile. So, we're going to start numbering our sections in the northeast corner, and we're going to go west to section 6. Then we're going to drop down to section 7 and go east and back and forth until we get to section 36 in the southeast corner. That numbering system is referred to as Busterfondonic, and it's Latin for as the ox turns while plowing. And really, that's true. You can't make this stuff up. That's exactly what it is. Let's take a look at a graphic representation of what I'm talking about. This is a graphic representation of what I was just talking about. If you take a look at the chart, you'll see that section 1 is in the northeast corner of the township, and section 36 is in the southeast corner of the township. Now you'll see all these numbers that are around our township. Those are the sections of the townships that meet the township we're looking at. You'll also notice that it says that each section is 80 chains or 1 mile, and 6 miles is 480 chains. And a township, as we know, is 6 miles by 6 miles. So that's what it looks like. That's the typical numbering of a township. Now let's talk about how the township is subdivided. Now the meridional section lines, they have precedent on order of survey. You do them first. And this is the thing that you have to remember. We were talking when we were doing the townships that the township lines, the north-south lines on the townships, were true on the true meridian, that is true north. Well, section lines are not. They're initiated at the section corners on the south boundary, and what you want to do with those is they want to be run north parallel with the east township boundary. Now that makes them different than the townships because they're not running true north, they're running parallel with the east boundary, which means as we go from east to west, we're going to have to make corrections in order to keep those section lines the way we want to. And I have some graphics we'll have a look at. Okay, this is what we were just talking about. What you're looking at here is a map of a township. And on the east line, you'll notice that the bearing is north. When you see that on a government map like this, that means it's true north, and it's along the 5th guide meridian east. Now, if you go over 1 mile, you'll notice that the north-south line is north 0 degrees 01 minutes west. And that was to compensate for the convergence of meridians. As we just discussed, the section lines, north-south section lines, are parallel with the east line of the township. So you'll notice that 1 mile west, it's 1 minute northwest. 2 miles west, it's north 0 degrees 2 minutes west, and then so forth and so on, all the way across the township. And the last correction is north 0 degrees 05 minutes west. That means that at this latitude where this township is, what we had to do is we had to correct 1 minute for conversions for each mile that we went west from the east line of the township. And that's what we're talking about, how these north-south lines are not true north, but parallel with the township. Okay, the meridional section lines, as we've just discussed, are parallel with the east line of the township, and they're numbered from the east to the west. Now, as we start surveying this township and subdividing it into sections, we're going to start in the east and we're going to run the first range of sections to the north. Then we're going to go to the next range west of the first one, and so forth and so on. So we're going from east to west and from north to south as far as subdividing the township. Now, if that east boundary of the township, that is the range line, is within limits, those 14-minute limits we talked about, 14-minute limits, we found, when we retrace it to have a bunch of angle points in it, what we can do is we can mean that course of that range line out, and we can make the section lines, the north-south section lines, parallel with the mean course of that township line. And that can happen fairly common. Now, as we're surveying these sections, the regular quarter, section, and section corners, so we have quarter corners and section corners, they're going to be run at 40 and 80 chains all the way to the north line, or the north section. And so we put them in standard position all the way up to the northernmost section in the township. Now, as you're surveying in a section, you're going to start by going north from the southern section corner of the baseline or the section before it. You're going to run north 40 chains and then north 80 chains. And before you go on with that meridional section line, you're going to go to the east and you're going to tie in to the existing corner to the east. So you're going to complete one section by running the latitudinal section lines before you go on to create the next section. Now, when we get to that northernmost section line, the last mile of the meridional section line is run as a random line with temporary quarter corner set at 40 chains. We're going to go and we're going to find out what the falling is, and we're going to correct that last meridional section line, that is the line for the section in the northern tier of the township. And if it's found to be within limits, then we're going to correct it to the proper position that it should be, but it has to stay within limits. Now, that's that 21-minute rule for section lines. So we'll come up 40 chains, and then we're going to put that error in that last half mile. That should sound familiar to you. We've talked about that before. Now, the exception to what we just talked about is when the section line is run on up to a standard parallel. Remember, the standard parallels were designed to compensate for convergence. So what we would do is we would run the section line, the north-south section line, parallel with the east range line till it hit the standard parallel, and then we would put in a closing corner. And that way we can correct for convergence as we go further north. Now, keep in mind that at this point, we're throwing all of the error as we're surveying those sections north. We're putting all of that error in the last half mile of the township. Now, latitudinal section lines, that is the east-west section line, are generally run from west to east, connecting to monuments that are already placed, except for the west range of sections, and we'll talk about those in a minute. And what they do is they will go off on a temporary line, and they'll set a quarter corner at 40 chains. They'll check the falling as they get to the line to the east. They'll make their corrections, and then they will correct the quarter corner to the proper line. This is a graphic of what I was just talking about. The line is the corrected, and quarter corner is set at the proper place. So what I'm saying here is that when we're on the west side, we're at a section corner, and we're going to we could just turn 90 degrees and we could go out, and at 40 chains, we're going to set a temporary quarter corner. Then we're going to go over to the line that has already been surveyed on the east, when we're going to find the falling, that is how far we're away from the corner that we need to check into. At that point, we can make our corrections and we can come back to the temporary quarter corner and set it in its true position. That's what I was talking about going over random and true. And this is for the section. Now, when we get to the west range of townships, we're going to go north, parallel with the East Township line. Then what we're going to do is we're going to run the line west instead of east to tie into the range line to the west. And it's going to be a random and true just like we did before, but we're going to place the quarter corners 40 chains from the west and put all of the error from east-west directions, all of the error into the west half mile. As we just discussed, the random is then corrected back to the true latitude on the east-west line for that last range of sections in the west, and the error of the township is placed in the last half mile. So what we have now is we have all these sections in the township, and we've pushed all the error to the north half mile and to the west half mile. Now here's a graphic of what I was talking about. As you can see, the blue line are the township lines. Down at section 36 in the lower right-hand corner, 1 mile from the southeast township corner, you'll see a line going, it's called number 1. That's the first line to be surveyed. Now that line number 1 is parallel with the East Township line. You run north 40 chains, you place a quarter corner, and then you go up another 40 chains for a total of 80 chains. You place a section corner. Then at that point, you're going to go on a random line to the east, and you're going to set a temporary quarter corner, and then you're going to check into the township line, find your falling, do your correction to where that line is supposed to be, come back and set a permanent quarter corner on the line where it's supposed to be. At that point, you're going to go up and you're going to survey the next meridional section line at 40 and 80 chains. That's that number 3 that you're looking at there. And number 4, you're going to do the same thing as you did before. You're going to go over random, correct, and come back. And then you're going to go 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the exact same way. But at 11, we're going to go up 40 chains on a temporary, set a temporary point. We're going to find our falling. We're going to correct that line 11 to be parallel with the township line, if it's within limits, to the monument that was already placed on the township line to the north. Now, at that point, we're going to set our quarter corner and we're going to put any excess, that is all the error, in the last half mile. And we're going to complete that process for the next row of sections. And then the next range of sections, so forth and so on. Now, when we get down to line 45 between sections 32 and 31, look how this is done. We're going to go north on line 45, then we're going to go east on line 46, random and true, and then we're going to go west for line 47, check into the senior monument on our west range line, random and true. And then we're going to go up to 48, line 49, line 50. So when we get to the west part of the township and we're putting in our sections, we're running both those ranges of sections at the same time. That is the last 2 ranges. And we're throwing all of the error into the west part of the township. So now we have our error in the west and in the north. Now, these 25 sections that you see here are called regular sections because they are supposed to be 80 chains by 80 chains. And all of the error is in sections 1 to 6, and then 7, 18, 19, 30, and 31. So those wouldn't be regular sections because that's where the error is. And in theory, these 25 sections that are called regular sections, they're supposed to be 80 chains by 80 chains. Now, this is the way things were designed. This is reality. This is an actual township in Oregon. And when it was first surveyed, the maps were returned much like the way we looked at it, just in the last slide. But when they came back and they did a retrace, they found that all these section corners were really very far out of place. And it ended up with a township looking like this. Now, here's the thing. Because those original corners were recovered, they still held in the field. Original corners hold even if they're out of place. And we're going to talk more about that as things go on. But this is what actually happened when they went back in and they went in and found where the corners actually were and retraced what the original surveyor did. So this is reality. The slide before this was how we would like to see it. Okay, what we've just been over is the proper way to lay out a section. Now, we started at the southeast corner. We ran north with the meridional lines parallel with the east line. We threw all of the air into the north and to the west of the township, and the east-west lines of the sections were run random and then corrected back for true. We set corners every 40 chains. We have quarter corners and section corners every 40 chains, and we built from south to north and from east to west, throwing the air in the last half mile. Well, we're going to talk much more about sections as we're going on, but now we have the big picture of how sections were supposed to be placed. One thing I can't emphasize enough is that before you do this, take a look at the record, because the surveyors, the original surveyors, left records, that is field notes, of what they did, and they have to be studied and to see exactly how the surveyor went about what he was doing. Now, one thing that we all should know is that we're not trying to retrace what the surveyor was supposed to do, not even so much what the surveyor said he did, but we're supposed to retrace exactly what the surveyor did. And that's what we need, why we need to check the record.